Welcome back. This is our final episode of our Headspace series with Senda and Phil. A few quick things to hype, as always. The first thing that we want to talk about is that September is International Podcast Month. What is International Podcast Month? It is a wonderful opportunity for all of us podcasters to cross-promote, celebrate each other, and share the love of podcasting with the world. To celebrate, a collaboration of diverse and inclusive podcasting folks have recorded RPG one-shots and audio drama minisodes and have contributed to a month-long blog.
And I am going to be participating in this event in force. I pretty much did everything that you could do in this event, so keep an eye out pretty much the entire month. At the beginning of the month, you can catch the game that I played with Victoria Rogers from the Broadswords at the helm. Also, I have a small guest spot on the Interference audio drama mini episode. Then at the very end of the month, you can catch me running my All Out of Bubblegum hack, All Out of Elder Signs. And finally, I created an audio drama episode myself. It is a precursor to a brand new podcast that I will be developing within the next year or so called Side Heroes. And throughout the month, you will be able to catch up on a couple articles that I wrote for the event. And needless to say, I did quite a lot for this thing because Tess is the best.
We also wanted to let you know that Domina Magica, which we discussed in our episode with Jim McClure, is now on Kickstarter. It has already funded and met several of its stretch goals. So if playing a game about magical girls sounds like your jam,
oh yeah,
right? If you are Ryan, we will put a link to the Kickstarter in our show notes and you can head over there.
And as usual, we do have our Discord server still going strong, so feel free to join us at discord.charactercreationcast.com and join the discussion.
You can also support us on the One Shot Network Patreon page at patreon.com/oneshotpodcast. You can catch our first bonus episode that features me talking with my newly appointed best friend, Jude, about our experiences at Gen Con.
And another great way to support us is to write a review on Apple Podcasts or the podcast review service of your choice. We definitely appreciate more of them. This one comes in from Dungeons and Dumbbells, which is Cameron from Sounds Like Crows. And it is titled, Oh Me, Oh My. And there's a lot of caps locks in this one.
You have to read it like super enthusiastically.
I will try my best. Are you ready for Amelia and Ryan's gentle voices to kick you in the head with interesting and new character creation concepts from equally interesting people around the tabletop RPG community? Okay, I'll stop.
That was really good.
Then you, my friend, have come to the right podcast. These two are absolute gems, and they do an amazing job highlighting the pros and cons of various tabletop RPG systems and how to build characters. Thank you so much, Cameron.
Thank you, Cameron. That was a very good review. A+. I give that review 5 stars. With all of that, thank you for bearing with us this week. Here is your episode.
Welcome back to our discussion episode. Last time we created a group of operators for Headspace. This episode we will be discussing the character creation process. We are very excited to welcome back Senda and Phil of Panda's Talking Games, among other things. And we will start with Phil this time. Do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself again, Phil, for everybody at home, and tell us a bit about the character that you made in our last episodes?
Sure, I'm Phil Vecchione, writer, podcaster, game designer, blah, blah, blah.
That doesn't help anybody find anything.
Yeah, I mean, I'm DNA Phil on Twitter, and I have a couple podcasts on Misdirected Mark and work for and am a partner at Encoded Designs. So last time, the character I made for Headspace was the runner. His name was Charger. He was a neon and had some kind of cool stuff. Had a vehicle link and some other goodies, and was responsible for driving the contagion into the what is now quarantine zone after the tsunami. So kind of racked with guilt for his part in infecting all these people.
And Senda, do you want to introduce yourself again and tell us about the character you made?
Yeah, I'm Senda, and I do Panda's Talking Games with Phil, and I also do She's a Super Geek with my other co-host who has been on this show before, and I also write for Gnome Stew. I guess we'll say that. And you should all look up my game, Love and Justice, because it's super cool. And I was playing the White Coat, whose name was Angel, and I'm also a Neon, and I have cool snakeskin patterned skin and a glowing, floating white light-emitting hair. So that's me. I run a cramped and impoverished but essential clinic on the streets where I'm basically trying to develop the cure for this disease that's spreading. But I am working for redemption because I created this disease.
Amelia, can you tell us a bit about your character?
Sure. So my character was Kurosawa, which is the Ronin. So I know I was responsible for helping to destroy some of the infrastructure of the city that made the emergency response a lot more difficult after the tsunami and sort of aided in the outbreak becoming more of an epidemic, pandemic level situation. I feel like that's most of it.
What did you look like?
Oh, yeah. I guess that's important.
Yeah, because we all looked really, really cool.
Yeah,
we did.
I looked less cool than you guys because I went with Drifter. And so I had pretty threadbare clothes, kind of frizzy hair, and an eye patch.
Nice.
Yeah.
And what about you, Ryan?
I went with the tech, and his name is Flynn. He was from the corporate subculture, and he likes to wear overly expensive clothing just because he likes to look good while he is doing his tech stuff. And he's actually the one that designed the release mechanism for the contagion for the corporation that he was working for prior to going rogue. And he is wanting to figure out a way to create a mechanism to release a cure once we can find it or recreate it.
Recreate, yeah.
Yeah.
Because everything went very, very wrong when we tried to get it back.
Yes.
Just a little bit. Yeah, we lost 2 people from our team. Was that Razor and Washington?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, Washington.
R.I.P. Washington. You were too good for us.
He was too good for us.
Oh, we didn't deserve
Man,
you.
what a terrible way to go, too.
Seriously. Oh, gosh. All right. Well, how about we go ahead and dive right into a segment that we are calling D20 for Your Thought.
D20 for your thoughts?
In this segment, we want to talk to our guests about their thoughts on the character creation process and how it feels in this system compared to others. But first, we'd like to ask how each of you got into role-playing games for the first time. So how about we start with Phil?
I am old, so I am a product of the 1980s explosion of D&D. I was in elementary school when my neighbor and his buddies were playing D&D, of which I think they were playing D1, Descent into the Depths of the Earth. And I saw the dice and the maps and just all of them sitting around the table talking, and I was immediately hooked. And I wound up being in a separate game because those were older kids and they weren't going to take any younger kids to play D&D. So I got my neighbor to run stuff for me. And so I played, first edition D&D and then pretty much just kept playing without much of a break since 1982.
Oh, wow.
Because I'm old.
As long as I have been alive.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, you're old.
It's longer than I've been alive.
Old
2
man
years old
Phil.
at that point, so. All right. How about yourself, Senda?
Okay, well, I told the long version of this story actually on I Am Here, Tessa's new podcast, which is fantastic.
Oh,
so
it's so
I will
good.
tell the story in brief
Yeah.
because it could take me a while. So I basically had like these two No, skip that part. Okay.
As I say, do you have like the two phases of like the when I was younger and then after I had kids?
Well, I do kind of have that, but that's different. So basically what happened is I was super into reading fantasy books and stuff. And I read like as many Dragonlance books as I could get my hands on. I had no idea that it was related to a game. And then of course I was like off prowling because let's be honest, every time you hit one of those giant Chronicles games where there's like so many different authors involved, like some of the books are like really good and some of them are like,
Yeah.
And so I was always like hunting down more books by Margaret Weiss and Tracy Hickman, of course, because the really good ones, right? So I stumbled across the Dark Sword trilogy, which was a trilogy, of course. And I read them and it's like this cool, like they have laser swords, but they like punch needles into your hand to like suck energy out of you. I don't know. It's been years since I've read them, but I was super into it. And one day I'm at a used bookstore, or maybe it was a library book sale or something. I don't remember exactly. But I picked up this book. Like I'm going through the fantasy section. I'm like, oh, this is a Dark Sword book. Like it's got the name, like the logo on it and everything. And I'm like, I've never heard of this book. And like, it's not part of the trilogy. And like, what is it? And I pick it up and I buy it, of course. And then I take it home. And what I didn't know at the time and didn't really figure out for a while was, and I can't quite remember, and I'm not sure that I still have it even, but it was either the setting book or the rules for the Dark Sword system, but I don't think there was really a system, so it was much more like, here's a setting book, and here's how you run games in this world, but I didn't know what an RPG was. So I was like, designing cities and like storylines in notebooks and being like, I don't really understand how all of this works. And then, and that happened in like, I don't know, middle school. And then I got to college. So many years passed because my friends were not as nerdy as me. And I got to college and I was living on the honors floor. And one day one of my friends came by and was like, hey, we're going to play D&D. And it was like right after 3rd edition came out. We're like, we're going to run a game of D&D. And I was like, okay, like, how does that work? And he was like, you get to play characters in a fantasy thing. And I was like, I'm in. Yes. And so like only later after I had played for a while, did I look back in retrospect and go, that was a setting book that I picked up. I get it. Now I understand. But so that's how it started, was basically once I finally found a group of nerds, it sort of evolved naturally into playing 3rd edition D&D. And from there I went to 3 to 3.5. And I got to whine about how all my weapons got smaller because of course I was playing a Kender, so that's halfling, but you know, etc.
You are like the one person that chapter in the front of every RPG book is for. What is a role-playing game?
Except it wasn't in the front of that book.
Oh no, the one time that we really could have used it.
Right. So like that thing where people are like, I'm not going to put that chapter in. I'm like, that's great. Except you really don't know who's going to pick up your book.
Exactly.
Right. I know. I just always wish that they were like, I don't know, that there was like a way to make them interesting for people who are like, I know what this is. You know what I mean?
Well,
like I'm always like, oh, we'll just skip that part. But
if you can keep them short and succinct and make it easy for people who do know what it is to just get past it, like, then I think it's okay. And I also totally understand, like, not putting it in these days. It's like, I don't have a problem with that, but it is really funny because I am that person who had this book and I was like, I literally don't understand what's happening, but I'm going to try and use it anyway. Right.
I feel like that's how a lot of people start out, though. They're like, oh, I ended up with this book and I didn't know what to do with it, but
there's a lot of stories about that kind of thing, actually. Yeah. Like a lot of people stumbling across basically setting books. And like you can see that there are rules and that there should be rules. But like the reason I'm pretty sure it was a setting book is I don't remember any mention of dice or anything whatsoever. Like, so it must have been created to run in some version of like a basic D&D system. I mean, it's a pretty fantasy world, so I don't know.
Yeah, so you're trying to like do that backwards equation of like, what is this for?
Right, I'm going to try and recreate, like, I understand that there's a game, like a game master, and I understand that there are players and that you tell a story together, but like then from there, like I didn't have any concept of how you like would work with, like, I didn't have the actual rules.
How do you do that collaboratively? I don't, like, just hang out or...
Like, are there, like, I didn't know that there were dice involved. Like,
right.
You know.
Interesting.
So
that's so
it was
weird.
Interesting. Yeah, that was my first experience. And then from there, we went to, actually playing. And I played that first campaign that I played for like a year and a half, and I was a college student, so we literally played it for like 8 hours at a time, and we went after anime clubs. We went to anime club from 7 to 10 on Fridays. Then we went back to the dorms, and we played D&D from 10 until whenever the Red Bull wore off of our DM and nobody could afford to buy him a new one. Like, sometimes the sun came up.
Those were the days.
Yeah.
Those were the days.
College was phenomenal for role-playing.
I didn't roleplay in college. Like,
I'm so sorry.
I did a little bit
Yeah.
in high school, and it was like kind of a not super great experience. And then I didn't start again until like 2 or 3 years ago.
Yeah. Welcome back. I'm glad
Yes.
you're here.
I'm glad to be here.
I am also glad you're here.
Yeah, I got tired of being left out because my ex would go off and have his game night. And I was like, I feel like I miss role-playing games. Like, I remember liking the concept of it. And then I was like, you have to take me. And so I kept like baking cupcakes and stuff until they all agreed to let me come. And they were like, fine, as long as you bring stuff.
Bribery.
And I was like, yes. And then now we're here. And I was like,
Now we're here where you're like, no, I'm sorry. This is actually my hobby.
right, right. When you guys make characters for any game, not necessarily for Headspace, do you have a particular process or a particular way of doing things, or do you kind of just do what feels right?
I mean, I personally, I know that I do a lot of kind of what feels right, but the key thing for me, I mean, I'll pick all sorts of different things across a big, wide spectrum of people because it's fun to play people and types of people and experiences and stuff that I haven't played before. Like, that's cool to me, and I'm just in that space. There was a long time where I was like, well, I just play rogues, so I will take the most roguish thing you have. And I moved past that. The key thing to me is actually having a good feel of what like my motivation is for like, why am I here? Why am I in this story? And secondarily, having a good relationship with at least one of the other characters at the table. And those are the two best predictors for me of if I'm going to like the character and if I'm going to enjoy the game. Or having a motivating factor, which doesn't have to, like, it can be a conflicting thing, and that's awesome. Like, I like doing things the hard way. That's part of how I game. And having that relationship. Yeah. So if the game doesn't build that in for me, then that's something that I have to put in a little bit more work into doing for myself, right?
Totally, but it's worth it.
Oh, yeah.
What about you, Phil?
I think mostly for me, it's first understanding what the core loop of the game is about. So what is the actual thing that you do session to session in this game? Then I look at the characters in terms of, well, how do they contribute to that core loop? So, if our game, in this case, like for Headspace, like, this is a cyberpunk game, so doing jobs is a big component. So, part of that kind of thinking through it is, well, how does the runner fit in with doing jobs, right? And so then, that's, transport in, transport out kind of thing. And so then that gives me like kind of the hook for, okay, I think I can play this character because I kind of understand what my purpose is in the whole of the game. And if I can't figure out that core loop, then I have a lot harder time picking out characters. So then I default to barbarian. So,
if you catch me in a situation where I just have to pick something and I don't have any concepts, then I still pick rogue. Like, it's just a thing.
Yeah, I wind up picking something tanky and smashy.
Yeah. That's how we ended up with Smash Man and Skill Monkey.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, you do what works. When you're not sure about the rest of it, you kind of stay in that comfort zone, which I like when games have that sort of a more defined, like, here is what a character is going to do in this game. Or if the game itself doesn't have that, to have a really solid session 0 where you can sit down with the GM and say, okay, what are we doing in this game? Because I think there's nothing worse than coming into a game and having this really cool character concept and then having nothing for that character to do. Because I think probably most of us have been in a situation where like that, where you've got this really great idea and like no opportunity to use any of those cool hooks that you've put in place. And it's such a bummer.
Yeah. Yes.
I mean, I actually kind of work to avoid that. Like I've had so many problems with players coming in with preconceived notions of characters that they wanted, then those notions not fitting into the scope of the game, that I never come in with an idea. I could basically come in blank and I'm like, okay, let me see what this game's supposed to do, what it's about, and I'll start from there. But yeah, I've just seen so many times where people are like, I'm going to make this great pyromancer and I'm going to do all this cool, flame stuff or whatever. And then only to find out the campaign is like set in a water world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right?
Underwater.
It's set underwater, right? And the pyromancer is like screwed from like, the moment the campaign starts. So yeah, I really strive to kind of come in empty, more just basically like, okay, I'm committing to playing this game. I think this game is cool. All right, let's see what, if the designers have done their job, these characters all do something to support whatever that core loop of the game is. So I just need to see which one of those support things is, jives with me the most.
Yeah, that's a good, healthy detachment to it, though. I feel like So I have a hard time with that, though, just because I'm a terrible decision maker. And so when I go into those situations, especially when you have a session 0 and you do character creation together as a group, I'm always the one that's holding things up because I haven't made a decision yet. And then you've put these like things in front of me and I'm like, oh, I don't know. What am I going to do? I have no ideas. I have to come in with like something.
I think you can look in advance. Like if I know I'm going to go play, like if I know I'm going to go to a game of Monster Hearts, like I will go and look through the playbooks for Monster Hearts. I just won't commit to one because if I come in and somebody's like, oh, I totally want to be the vampire, and all I thought about was being the vampire, like
you're gonna have a bad
then I'm
time.
back to square one.
Yeah.
But if I went through it and I was like, oh, the vampire's cool, but so is this one and so is that one. Then like when we get to the table and somebody's like, oh my God, I like the vampire's totally calling to me, I can be like, cool. All right. Yeah. I got a couple other choices kind of thing. Oh yeah. I mean, I can't go to a restaurant without checking a menu before.
Yeah. There's a happy medium in there somewhere between like having no prep and no, and then coming in with like, I have 12 pages of backstory that I wrote. Like, would you like to see my novella?
Right.
Because like Senda said too, and it's a lot of fun to kind of hook player characters together too and have those relationships too. So if you come in with this really strong concept that even if it does fit with the story, like doesn't fit with what anybody else is doing too, then that's kind of a bummer. And I think that you develop cooler backstories and stuff too when you work with people.
I pretty much never let my players develop their characters away from the table. If we're going to make characters, we're all making them at the table together. Like,
yeah.
I don't do the thing where it's like, show up with your character because it's 6 snowflakes show back up and they're, all of them are super special and different and don't interlock and have connections to each other. And then I'm just spending a whole bunch of time like trying to make connections between them as opposed to, okay, we're all sitting down at the table. We're playing a superhero team. Figure it out. Which one of you used the difficult one? Which one of you used the wisecracker? Like,
yeah, it ends up being a series of vignettes instead of like a solid story.
Yep.
That's something fairly new to me because in the games I played previously up until like the last year or so, we always just did it separately. It was like, show up, like here's roughly kind of what I think we're going to do in this game. And I don't know, bring a character. Session 1 is this day. And it was like, oh, okay. And then you get there and nothing goes together and it's no good.
Yeah, I honestly can't think of a Palladium Heroes Unlimited game that my friends and I have played where we didn't do it that way, where we all created our own cool characters and it was up to the game master to get us all together in session 1. And sometimes it was messy. A lot of times it was messy because it was like, okay, why should our characters care about each other when we never knew each other beforehand?
In the defense of Palladium, making your character away from the table is good because, 8 to 10 hours of character generation is just not sustainable when you have a group of people trying to share one book. Like, no, go off and make your Heroes Unlimited character. Yep. I'll see you next week.
Because you want to still have friends to play the game with eventually.
Right.
And if you're doing it together, it seems like you might not be friends anymore.
Yeah.
Heroes Unlimited and Ninjas and Super Spies. That was the other one where character creation was like a 6-hour ordeal.
And you combine them, and it's even worse.
Oh.
Like my friends and I did.
Next episode on Creation Cast.
So many.
Yeah, Amelia has no idea what she's
Palladium
into.
games.
Because we're planning to cover it sometime. Because that's my passion game.
Oh, I'll do TMNT. Like that's.
Yeah, okay.
That's a fun one.
I don't know.
So I have to jump in at this point.
PBTA games.
Yeah, I'm a fan of PBTA and also like Session Zero. The game that I'm playing right now is a police procedural and it's Savage Worlds. Like there's no official like thing with that, but like Session Zeros are kind of my favorite. So whether the game builds it in or not, I kind of love them. They're super fun because as you start figuring out how you're all connected, like everything gets better and better. And I feel like it ratchets up the stakes for all of the situations higher. And I like high stakes in my games because I like feels.
Yeah. I'd rather be more connected to the other players at the table than the NPCs that I've shoehorned into my backstory.
Yeah, and I'm going to also say that it probably has something to do with my personal GMing style, which is if you hand me 12 pages of backstory, I'm not going to read it. Like, sorry, I don't have time. Like 4 sentences, yes. A page, maybe?
If it's really compelling.
Right. Like, that's a lot of work for you to ask me to do, which is really funny because I know that at least one of the gals that I play with, like she does that level of backstory constantly, but she very much adheres to the theory that I think both Phil and I adhere to, which is that if it hasn't happened and come up at the table, it doesn't actually exist. Right.
I mean, to be clear, a player can write 12 pages of backstory.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I'm only going to read about 4 sentences. Yes. So like if 12 pages is what gets you to the table and feeling comfortable about your character, go ahead and write it. But expectation wise, just give me like 4 bullet points about this character and and then the rest we'll do through play.
Yeah, right. I mean, and I definitely think that like there have been times where I have spent time writing out a backstory and stuff, again, with the understanding that like it may end up changing through play or something like that. But it does sometimes help you kind of embody the character a little bit when you're playing to have a really good idea of like who they are. And, you know, so I think that's something that like, if you want to do, there's certainly value in that. Don't expect everyone to come along for the ride with you. If you want to put in that work, that's fine, but don't put that on me. But I think Session Zero has a lot of value in that way, and like the way that we build characters. And, you know, obviously, I mean, that's essentially what this show is like a really prolonged Session Zero for every single game.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Which is great. That's why it's cool. Yeah.
Yeah. And that kind of leads us into the next question. Headspace is, you know, like a lot of the other PBTA games, your Session Zero is part of the game.
Yeah.
Because you have to create your characters as a group because it has all the questions that link everybody together. So how do we think the character creation for Headspace stacks up to other systems that we've played before, not necessarily other PBTA games?
I mean, I always like systems that create relationships with characters from the get-go, and Powered by the Apocalypse in general tends to be really good at that. It's not the only game that does it, but it's one of its strong points in terms of character creation as a whole, I think. The thing that I think makes Headspace really different from that is that you're not only involved in creating Session Zero style backstory when you're doing relationships, you are also involved in Session Zero style backstory when you are putting your stats in. Like that is the thing about this game that I think is unbelievably unique, that I really like. Because it basically, by the time you get to the point where you're answering questions about each other, you're also relating emotions to each other, and then you are tying that directly into the mechanics that you're going to use for the rest of the game. So it is connected. It all connects in really, really well. It's really tight. It's really tight. Mark did a really great job with it. In that it's inevitable that you're going to get these close relationships, because it would be really hard to do character creation without doing that. Like, it is built to drive you in that direction, right? I've never done a character creation in this game that didn't have, some pretty intense elements. And I know, like, the first time I played this game, when Mark ran it for me at Gen Con, like, 2014, 15, I don't know. I don't remember. Like, we sat down and we didn't really play much out. Like, we played for like half an hour outside of the character creation because it was just 2 hours we'd like carved out. But the character creation was so phenomenal. Like, I didn't care. Like, it's such a major part of the game. It stands very well on its own as the first session of a game, right?
It feels like a mini RPG in and of itself. Trying to create the story as if you had actually played out the missions that you're describing, all of this stuff happening.
Right. And especially in that you're going to have a ghost, right? Like, that there's probably someone who died. Like, it is also immediate stakes raising and impetus for creating these stories where something bad must have happened.
I wasn't prepared for that. I mean, I was, in a way, I knew it was something that happened. I wasn't prepared for the raw emotion that was brought about because of this sort of process. Like, when we got to Washington and the way he had passed, like, we had an idea and then we built on that and then we had the final idea and I was like, wow.
Yeah, it gets heavy.
It's really emotional.
Yeah.
And I love that it's, it has like that immersive quality right as you're going through character creation. Like, you're already in the story.
Yeah.
I don't think I've played a game that has had that sort of emotional investment before you even start playing.
I think that it leaves you in a very good place to start off immediately. And sometimes starting off immediately, like when I run this, sometimes it literally means that you just start from the place where like the backstory ended. So it's like, if I were going to run this game, it would be perfectly reasonable of me to be like, well, I could start in the future as you guys try to do something and I'll make something up. Or I can just say, all right, you're all in the getaway car. Tell me how you get out of here, right? Like, as you're being chased all over the place and stuff. So it's perfectly possible to also literally just start, because you basically build up to the high point in a story, and then you can play through how you got out of the rest of that situation. We know it was bad, so that's an adventure in and of itself. Or you can be like, okay, we got away, and then you can say, okay, now here's the next heist, right? The next job. They're both very effective, but it gives you a lot of impetus to kind of act as your character, because you already have a very good idea of who they are, what their life has been like, and this terrible thing that they did, right? And why they are now acting to try to make the world better, because everything is horrible, because partially at least because of this thing that they did, right? Or this thing that they didn't stop, depending on how you set it up. But then also now you're linked to all of these other people, and you have this even more emotional drive that's a little bit closer because, you just lost someone.
Yeah.
Like, raise the stakes. Here's a character. Get attached to them. Now what happened to them? Like, why aren't they here anymore?
Yes. We've kind of answered our next question a little bit, but we usually like to talk about how the mechanics of character creation reinforce the feel of the game once you start playing. And we've covered it a little bit, but I think we can kind of expand on it, that like the relationships between characters are really important. The backstory is really important. Those kinds of things seem to be central to creating the characters, but also to playing the game. I mean, I haven't played this game necessarily, so I can't say for sure, but
you should play it sometime.
I want to. Call me.
Phil, I've been talking a lot. You want to talk about this part?
Yeah, that's fine. I mean, I think some of the interesting things of the way the mechanics tie in, besides just the backstory stuff, is since you have to pick an emotion that goes with every one of your skills and those leading questions that kind of tie to them, like, you wind up not only defining your skills, but you kind of define these events that kind of surround them, and why does rage, govern pilot, and why does, ego govern parkour? And so it's even more reinforcing in that respect. So I think it does a really good job of kind of pulling all of that stuff together. I would say is my only critique, which I don't know if it comes out in play, is the subcultures. Like, nothing about the subculture really links to anything else. Like, you pick one for looks, but like it was the one piece of the game that, like, as we went through, I'm like, the subcultures are really cool, but like, I would have dug it if like you got a move or something.
Like if it was more defining than just aesthetic.
Yeah, like it was definitely the aesthetic, like, hey, you're going to pick the subculture. It's going to kind of help you pick, you know, your eyes, your hair, your body, and all of that, which I thought was cool. But everything else that you do in the game is both narrative and mechanical. And it's like the one part of the game that's like strictly, as far as I can tell, strictly narrative. I mean, I could be wrong, and Mark could be like, no, it totally in actual play, like it comes up. But I've played the game once in a one shot, and I don't remember it. I don't remember it coming up. So it's really the one piece like I would like to see is like your subculture gives you like a move or something. Maybe gives you like an edge or something that's based on that subculture.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that would be cool. Because, yeah, it does feel like, I don't want to say, like, tacked on isn't the right word. But there's something that's like...
Yeah, it's just the only piece that doesn't have a mechanical influence.
And maybe it's
on the
because
game.
everything else fits so well together. You know, maybe it's because everything else is really good, that this one part being okay is, like, not good enough.
It was the one time that we all went off and kind of did our own thing. Like, everything else during character creation, we were all kind of like, we had to keep talking to each other. Like, oh, you know, Kurosawa's, you know, was involved in the, you know, in the thing where I picked up Rage for Pilot. And, you know, Flynn, you know, we wound telling the story about Flynn's ego. But like, then when we were like, okay, everybody go pick a subculture, like we all just kind of like went, you know, like everybody put their heads down.
Yep.
Right. Looked at the book.
Yeah. Like looked at the book and like filled everything out. And then like, we just came back and told each other, but none of it linked together.
Do you think that's on purpose, though? Because it seems like a very individual thing when you're creating your character's literal identity in this game, where you create your look, you create your chosen identity. Because I would imagine that most of the neon characters didn't look that way from birth. You know?
Sure.
So at some point along the line, you as a character chose to make your hair all floaty and glowy, or your eyes all weird, or your skin all sorts of weird patterns on it. It seems like it's the one thing where you have full control over because in
the story you would have.
Yes, you would have chosen that path yourself instead of linking to other people. It's basically a self-identity sort of thing.
Right. It is the one piece of character creation narrative that just doesn't necessarily mechanically, like my choices don't mechanically affect how I play the game, right? I like what I chose. I like being like this glowy, crazy angel snakeskin creature. I kind of love it. And as a character and as a player, I'm going to take the opportunity to describe some of that cool stuff. So it becomes maybe a little bit setting reinforcing because I'm excited about the choices that I made. But in and of itself, I could have picked anything. It wouldn't really matter.
Right. Yeah, it definitely wouldn't matter rules-wise, at least.
Now, it would probably make a difference, and I think I've played it like this before, like if I'm trying to sneak into a corporation and my hair is glowing, that might have a different effect than if Flynn tries to sneak into a corporation and he looks like a corporate dude.
Yeah.
He's going to walk in more easily just through the front door than I am, right?
Oh, definitely right.
Yeah, but there's no, I mean, just to be hard about this, there's no mechanical
there's
penalty
no actual
for that.
mechanical stuff written in, right? That's totally up to
And in
GM.
fact, you're so hyper competent that if you are the one who has stealth,
you're just going to do it anyway.
You're in.
Yeah.
And if you're the one who doesn't, then you're actually going to make the roll to see if, you know, you can use the skill effectively. Yeah, I mean, I definitely think so. Powered by the Apocalypse games have a long history of including things to circle for different looks, like what kind of eyes you have, what kind of build you have, what kind of hair you have. And this certainly follows suit with that. So it does the same thing. It's really interesting. And I think it's because in other games, lots of other components don't connect to other characters. But in this game,
it's the only one.
So much connects that you literally can feel the one piece that in a regular game, you wouldn't think twice about it. But here it feels like the one piece that isn't connected to anything.
Right, because in Dungeon World, I don't think about it. But in Dungeon World, in Dungeon World, I sit down and I go, okay, here's some numbers. I'm going to circle. Okay, let's talk about relationships, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly. Like I'm going to make a whole bunch of choices. I'm going to pick these looks. Okay, I'm going to pick a name off the name list. I'm good.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, good to go.
It's interesting because that kind of reinforces the idea that you are connected through this weird cybernetic completely throughout the entire game. Mm-hmm. So it makes sense that the mechanics of character creation, for the most part, 99% of it is connecting with the other players.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Which was great, right? It's actually what makes character creation so much fun in this game is that connectiveness, because it isn't just sitting there like, okay, I'm going to make a bunch of choices. You're making a bunch of choices. Mm-hmm. We'll all tell each other about our choices when we're done.
Right.
It's literally like I'm making a choice and it's going to involve a story about your character.
Yeah. Because a lot of Powered by the Apocalypse, you usually sit down and you go, okay, I am the barbarian, so I want my strength to be my highest stat, and I'm going to put, my next one in my agility or whatever. Like you just, you're just numbers.
Yeah, I'm going to pick my hungers. Right.
Like,
I'm going to pick my hungers, and when we get to bonds, now we're going to do our thing where we link up.
Yeah, I was going to say, because even in Masks, there were a couple choices that we made collaboratively because we were sitting around. It was like, oh yeah, it would be cool if I did this thing that went with your thing.
Yeah.
But really, until you get to those questions at the end, there's nothing that says anybody has to have any say in what you're doing. Mm-hmm. Whereas this one, from step one, was very clear that this is a group effort.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We keep saying that like it's a session 0, but it almost is session 1 of a game. Like you've already started playing. You have this. You are creating the story as you're sitting there. It's not a separate thing.
And it absolutely can. I mean, it can be even more. It can be even more session 1. There's an option in the book to play, and I think this is the way Senda first played it on. She's a super geek, where the characters who died just died.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like you're in the middle of that op. It's not like for us, Washington died some point in the recent past and we're like collecting ourselves, for the next strike. But the other way that you can run this, which is like the real session 1, is that by the time you finish making characters, it's like, well, the helicopter went down and Washington's dead.
Yeah.
And you're still in the wreckage.
Yeah.
Go.
Yeah.
Which is a fun way to do it for one shots.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But yeah, I mean, it just goes to show that like character creation does a really, really good job in this game of setting those expectations of like, here's what this game is going to look like. Because joke's on you, we've already been playing it this whole time.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that actually we keep doing this goes into our next question of how does the character creation set our expectations for playing the game? And like we said, we're literally playing the game while we create the characters.
Yeah. Because you can take this story that you've created. If it all connects up, it isn't a requirement of the character creation process that everything should end up connecting to each other. But when you have me in the mix, it usually does, because I just love it, because it makes the stakes for that intro point so high. And I love that. I would rather like everything just be interconnected and it just be this giant disaster, because that's way more interesting to me.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm the kind of like garbage player that's like, how about some inter-party conflict? That would be fun.
Right.
I mean, and not because I want to like pick fights with people, but because I think those are really cool stories to tell and have a lot higher stakes and are a lot more personally interesting to people. That like, I care way more about the relationship between my character and Senda's character than I do about my character and random NPC number 4. Like that's, it's just, and there's so much more to continue to play out there.
Yep. That's my favorite. I feel like we're talking about a bunch of things that I've written articles about. I'm just going to say that because every time I say, I wrote an article on Gnome Stew about this, and then it cracks me up because I used to mock Phil for saying that all the time. So I'm just going to go ahead and insert that here.
So just look up this episode on Gnome Stew. Just like type in the transcript into the search bar.
Right. Well, it's like the last, I'm sorry, I will stop having this conversation, but it's like my last article was about having secrets in game. My article before that was about relationships in games. The article before that was about hard decisions. And the article before that was about feels. So
we've just covered your whole backlog then.
A lot of it.
Yeah. All the
pretty much for 2018, yeah.
We mentioned a little bit when we talked about the look, but what do you think is the biggest flaw of character creation in this system? Because we've said, that look kind of just doesn't quite fit as well as some of the other things. Are there other things about this that you don't love?
I didn't even dislike the subculture. I thought the subcultures were fine, and I thought they made sense to the setting. It literally had just that one critique of not being connected to anything mechanical.
It's not that I don't like this thing. I just want more of it.
Yeah.
I think maybe the one flaw to the character creation for this game is that everyone has to be there on day one.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know, and I don't recall if there's a thing in the book, like, what happens if somebody joins the game 5 sessions in? Like,
oh yeah.
Yeah, it's
like,
tricky.
Right? Like, can you connect somebody to the Headspace implant afterwards? And how does that affect everybody's skills? And what if they, play the character that's dead, like the character playbook that's dead? Like,
Yeah.
I don't know how you would do that, because it was like you could say that they come back from the dead, but then like they would need all of their skills, not just the one.
Well, what if you just went and got another infiltrator? Right?
Yeah.
Like, we lost Razor, but here's another infiltrator we hired. I don't think you do that. So I think that if there's a flaw to this game, and I'm careful to not say flaw because I think it's probably more of a design conceit, but you don't add anyone into this game. Mm-hmm. Like, everybody shows up on day one. Anyone can die and leave. There's a way to deal with that. If anyone wants to drop out of the game once the game's played, you would just treat it like a dead character, right? You would claim which skill you wanted to keep in the Headspace and say goodbye to them. But like, if you're playing it and somebody's like, "Oh my God, can I play with you guys?" You'd be like, no.
No, you gotta trade them out 1 for 1. You can't.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that might be like the real challenge is like you all, and you have to be there. You can't make characters separately.
No.
Like, that's the other, there's no option to make characters separately. You must be present.
It's definitely not a fast character creation process for a Powered by the Apocalypse game, but the reason that it's not fast is also the reason that I love it. So I wouldn't necessarily call it a flaw that it's not fast, but it's something that, if you know, like, okay, I'm going to go run this as a one shot at a convention where you have a very limited amount of time, really 3.5 hours, honestly, if we take everything into consideration.
Yeah, especially if you're playing with people who haven't done it before.
Yeah, they've never done it before and stuff. Your character creation process is going to take at least an hour and a half. So you have to take that into heavy consideration when you plan for this game as a one shot. And it's not, I wouldn't even call it a problem, but it's just like, it's different from a lot of Powered by the Apocalypse where it's like, sit down, make a character, 5 minutes. Okay, let's play. Right.
You're not going to get a lot of, in a one shot, you're not going to get a lot of actual table play.
Exactly.
Like, half your session's going to be character, and then you guys are going to do something.
Yeah, one thing.
You're actually, you're going to do you're going to have one small mission. I think the other thing that might actually be challenging to this game is I don't know if pre-gens will work.
I feel like they would not.
It's not as much fun. I've done it.
You could, but you would have to give everybody then a pretty solid rundown of what the situation is to be able to effectively play those characters.
And you also wouldn't have the emotional connection.
Yeah, which is
right.
the really fantastic thing that happens in character creation. Yeah. Now, having said that, I do think I'm not actually beating on Headspace for having a long character creation time frame,
right?
Because it is lots of fun to do, right? Right.
It's long, but it's not tedious.
It's not tedious
by any means.
It is, but it is a thing that as a GM you have to know about so that you're not like, I'm going to plan this whole heist thing where they're going to do all of this crazy stuff. And then you sit down at the table thinking, well, this is Powered by the Apocalypse. It'll take 5 minutes to make characters, and then it takes an hour and a half, right?
Right.
Senda and I've actually played Headspace in a one shot with Mark.
Yeah, I have a couple times.
Yeah, and I mean, you half the session or more is making characters, and then you have a little bit of a mission. It actually would be better in a long con situation where you have 3 sessions in 3 linked sessions in a convention, because this game benefits from having a little time and space to breathe. And so having a character creation session and then following it, like the end of that first session with an in media res opening, like a getaway or something, would be great. And then your second game is like a full on mission, and your third one is a full on mission that's going to close out some clocks. Like that's probably the ideal way to run Headspace at a convention.
Yeah, I would agree. I can't wait to play this as a campaign. It's going to happen one of these days.
Eventually. I think that those are all really valid points. And I think you're right that they're not necessarily flaws.
They are limitations.
Right. They're just things to keep in mind that definitely separate this game from other games. And depending on what you want out of a game, may or may not be for you.
Right. Mm-hmm. It's just stuff to kind of be aware of.
Mm-hmm. All right. So let's dig into the different character types a little bit. And one of the things we like to do is see how balanced the different characters are. And are there any that are stand out above the others?
It's funny because in most other games, in most of the games, I think this question works. Great. The really crazy part in this game is that we all share each other's skills.
Exactly. Yeah.
So
the answer is no. I mean, there's certainly ones that maybe would be better to have all of the skills of, or something. Like you may say that we definitely need this one, but
it would probably depend entirely on the actual situation that you found yourselves in as a character. Yeah, right. Just looking at it as it's a cyberpunk game, and I've played a lot of these characters, and I've run a lot of these characters, all of them, I think, have at least been in a game that I've been running. I have not noticed any sort of power differential that one person is more useful than other people.
Right. Basically, the ghosts that you have on your team, if you've got 2 missing characters, it kind of makes it a lot harder to figure out what's that one skill that you want to bring over. Because if you had a full party, you're only missing 2 skills. Well, now you're missing 4. And that gets a little bit more wishy-washy on what you want to keep.
So I will say, in my experience, what tends to happen, and this is true not just of this game, but of many, many, many games, right? Which is that if you have a sword, then everything becomes a thing that you can hack at. So the first time I played this with Mark, the one skill that we kept was parkour. And we used parkour for everything. We found a way to make parkour be the skill that made sense in every situation, right?
Yeah.
So I think that the skills are loose enough to allow you wiggle room to use them creatively without being so loose that you're stepping on each other's spotlights in terms of the ones that you can just do as a professional, right? Mm-hmm. So I think he actually walks a very good line on that. But I think in walking that line, I also I don't think that there's any particular playbook that it's well, you have to have this one or you can't play the game, right?
Right.
Yeah. I think it's a sign of how well designed this is, though, that this is a question that we talk about a lot, and comes up in a lot of other games that we're sitting here going, well, I don't really think it's an issue this time.
Exactly.
Yeah. That, this game it's really tight. Everything fits together very, very well. And I think you're right, though, the fact that you can use other skills and things like that, it just makes balance kind of a non-issue. At that point, it's much more how you use things and when you use them, and then really just your own personal comfort with the character that you're playing. Mm-hmm. Rather than it being a balance issue, it seems like it's much more about just how well you play that character, I guess.
Right. And I mean, there's basically rewards for functioning as a team, in terms of what he calls sync, which is special stuff that happens when you roll, blah, 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 right? But so there's a lot of rewards for essentially functioning as a unit, even when you're using someone else's skills, right? Mm-hmm. And that comes through both mechanically and in terms of role play at the table. Even when it's a situation Angel doesn't trust Flynn, it's still going to come across as not trusting you, but on a team, we're still a team.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Right? Because the mechanics kind of enforce that too. So I don't know. I think it plays really well. I don't think that there's a problem with any character being super unbalanced.
No.
Definitely.
One thing that we haven't actually covered at all, I'm surprised because we've covered most of these questions already, is how you go about creating NPCs in this game. There are some games that have kind of some setup for you that you can kind of find in the back of the book. There are some games that give you no rules at all and expect you to just make player characters for your NPCs. How does this game handle that?
Yeah, it's pretty simple, actually. Like, the NPCs, as if I recall, are actually just put together with just a few things. Like, they're based off of one of the operator types. So they have whatever operator skills go with the operator. And then a dominant emotion and a couple characteristics. Like, they're really, and that's actually, I think, pretty indicative of PBTA games in general. PBTA characters tend to be a lot thinner built. They're not built the exact same way that characters are built. Yeah. And they often don't need to be, just because of the way the GM moves work and things like that. Like, the GM's not actually rolling to hit you. Mm-hmm. So they don't need, with a D&D NPC, it needs to have the same comparable stats because NPCs use the same combat system as players use. But empowered by the apocalypse, GM moves are based off of, 6 minuses and things like that. And so you don't roll. Like, you just need to know, like, what do they do? What narrative function do they perform? And basically how much staying power do they have, in a scene before they're taken out?
Right.
So.
And it seems like so much of this game, the things that we filled out on our character sheet were specific to our party. Whereas when you have an NPC, you don't have to build those backstories. So you don't really need any of that information. Everybody really only has those 3 stats. Mm-hmm. So that would make it a lot easier to just kind of fill in those boxes if you don't have to answer all of those questions too. Like, that was what the majority of our time was spent on.
There are some in the back of the book because what Mark did is he basically created a major NPC related to each of the corporations. And I know it's true of his new setting book that's coming out as well. There is basically like a key player if you're going to run into a big bad boss kind of person, basically, for X corporation. Like, those people are kind of created for you. But again, it's mostly just kind of a quick, like, it's a paragraph about their backstory and what they do and like how they function in the world more than anything.
Then let's go ahead and talk about this our group's cohesion. Basically, how does our group gel together, and would we work well on the typical missions that you would go through in a typical game?
Oh yeah.
I think that's part of the conceit of the game, right? Is like you have to work well together. The character creation certainly gels everybody. Like, that is, I think, a thing that everybody comes out with. But also at the same time, you also have a big secret.
Yeah.
Right? Yep. So you actually can disrupt the cohesion of the group depending on what your big secret was. And some of those questions, if you remember, are pointed at other characters. Mm-hmm. Like, what was it? Flynn had a question about whose family did he put under surveillance, for a corporation. Like, those are great. The game starts so harmonious because you all agreed, right? The conceit of this game is like you all got this Headspace implant to be like the ultimate team. And then yet at the same time, like, your troubled backgrounds have these like landmines in it that, can cause these temporary disruptions.
Yep.
We really had some pretty serious inter-party conflict, like the couple of the things that we laid out. I mean, and it seems like there's no way to really not have that in this game. But the few that we laid out, we were not gentle about them.
No, and we shouldn't be. Because the thing is, like, really, when it comes right down to it, once you got that link in your head, the implant, like, it's not coming out, right?
No.
So you made this decision and you kind of made this bed. You're going to sleep in it with these people, whether you like them or not. Mm-hmm. And that's part of the conceit of the game, too. So, like, there's no, like, I don't like you guys. I'm not going to work with you anymore. Like, even if you made that decision, they would still be in your head, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, like, that's a thing. This felt to me like a pretty, I mean, it was good. I haven't had a bad character creation session for this game, right? Mm-hmm. But this is totally a game that I would pick up and run or play, and it would be great, right? So I think that this is pretty typical for this system, and I think that it would play out very nicely in this system also.
Mm-hmm. Now, one thing I remember during our character creation, we all talked about our regrets as we were creating the characters, but in the actual game, you keep those private, right?
Yeah, you do, because it's actually a mechanical thing when you choose to reveal that. So
Yeah.
the way that the regrets work is if you roll a 6-, which is bad. If it is something that, and this is one of those cool things, because I love hard decisions like this in games.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things where I get to decide as a character when I roll that 6-, am I taking that 6-, or do I reveal my regret to the rest of the party, right? If I reveal my regret, then I act as if the dice rolled a 10, which
Nice.
is like gets you your best stuff, right? But, to do that, I would have to tell you the story, like the vignette of me creating and realizing what I had just created in this disease. And then you would all know I'm the person who had created this disease that is killing hundreds of thousands of people.
Yeah. And
right?
that would be just a huge bomb in the middle of a session.
Exactly.
Yeah. Oh.
So the idea behind that is that should be an emotionally difficult choice, and it's something that you shouldn't do unless you really care about getting the 10 in that situation. But the other thing that revealing a regret does is, I mentioned sync earlier, it also gains sync for the entire group. So because you now actually know each other a little bit better, you gain this token it's like sync. You get sync. Like you're more in sync with each other. And the way that sync works, you can use it a couple of different ways, and I don't know if I remember all of them. So when as a group, as a cell, you gain sync, you all also get an experience point. So when we get to talking about advancement, like that's how you get experience points, is by working closely enough together that you gain sync. So again, as a team, mechanically, you're being rewarded for it. And then once you have sync, you can spend it by any player can spend it at any time to roll a 10, to just roll it.
Awesome.
And also, I guess then means that sort of prevents people like Senda and I from just derailing the game and making it constant inter-party conflict. Which, I mean, is kind of tempting. And there are, like you also have you're working against the clock on things too. So that there are story beats that you kind of have to hit and things like that. But I like that it does kind of require you to get, like, there's a mechanic that says you have to work together after we've gone through this character creation that says, here's why you're at odds. There's this incentive to kind of reel that back in a little bit.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it sets up really good inter-party conflict, but it's definitely not the purpose of the game to spend all of your time focused on that. And I think that a large driving function of the setting and all of the different settings is that there are pressing reasons that you have to work together.
Right.
Like there's this disease and there were these earthquakes and there's all of this really terrible stuff going on. And so even if I don't like Flynn because I don't trust him as far as I could like push him, I have to work with him because, and then here's the secondary part, right? Firstly, I have to work with him because I have to cure this disease. Secondly, like then you get into the part that's secret to me until it's revealed in play. Secondly, like I need to redeem myself because I created this disease. So I am willing to work with whoever I need to work with, even if I hate their guts.
Yeah.
Right.
So it sets you up into a situation where you have very strong reasons to work together, even if you don't like each other.
So in the system as a whole, what do you think about kind of how it plays out and how that lends to character development? Not character advancement, but like how does the game work and like how do the mechanics work for a character to kind of grow as a person over time? Because you still do have these conflicts and these, like you can share some of that information, but like how do you kind of overcome some of those obstacles?
Well, so I mean, I think first off, you're rewarded mechanically for making that difficult choice of revealing your regret. And that is definitely an emotional character development moment. That doesn't mean you no longer have one. It means that you get to create a new one. So now I get to say, oh, there's something else that I did that I'm also working for either revenge or redemption, right? So it means that the depth of the terrible things that you did keeps going. But that's definitely a way that it continues to develop the character as an individual. I mean, I think it gives you a lot of space with how you play out the relationship of the characters between themselves. but I don't think it does as much with that mechanically.
Oh, okay.
I think this game loads itself up with stories and, launches characters with potential sticking points with each other. And so character development over the course of the game is going to be as those things kind of emerge and play out, and the stories that kind of get told. I mean, a good GM is going to call back on a whole bunch of those things, right? A good GM is going to bring up this fact that this player's family's being watched by drones, and Flynn's gonna remember, like, oh, I'm the one who set up that surveillance network, I can help take it down. And yay, Flynn can help take it down, but why, Flynn? Like, why were you the one who set it up? Like those things are gonna totally happen throughout the game, and it's part on the players and it's part on the GM to really mine all of those connections and make sure that they are parts of the game going forward.
All right. Then let's go ahead and get into our character advancement segment and take it up a level.
Take it up a level. Take it up a level.
In this segment, we talk about how character advancement or leveling up works in this system. I know we've talked a lot about running this as a one-shot, but you can play it as a campaign. So if you do play this game over a longer period of time, how does a character level up, and what kind of perks and things do you get when that happens?
Operator advancement's pretty straightforward. Whenever operators gain sync, everybody gets an experience point. And then between sessions, you can spend your XP. Actually, they say anytime. So at any time, you can spend your XP to purchase additional edges and upgrades, or to increase a discipline by +1. So edges cost you, edges are easy. They cost you 3 experience points. Upgrades cost you 6. And adding 1 to any discipline is 9 XP per +1.
Oh.
So really straightforward, but very dependent on getting sync.
Yep, which means you have to be working together as a team.
So you share XP in this game then?
You each get your own XP, but you all
Yeah.
get it for the same. The trigger for everybody receiving XP is
Yeah.
the same, right?
Okay.
So everybody always gets XP at the same time.
Very
So you're
interesting.
always
Right.
going to.
You're going to spend it the way you
Yeah.
want.
Yeah.
I could spend my 3 and you could be saving up for your 6. But we're all always going to be functioning having had the same number of experience points because we always gain them as a group.
Oh, that's really interesting.
I mean, other than revealing that secret, what are the other ways that you can get that sync?
Or if you make a sacrifice for another person's drive. So like somebody's regret has to be revealed already for you to do it this way. If Kirasana knows that my regret is that I created the disease, and so my drive is redemption, and you take action in a very clear way to help me on my path to redemption, that gains us sync as a group.
Oh,
Okay.
that's cool.
I like it. So somebody has to be the first one to break.
Yeah. You have to hit a really complicated situation in which someone reveals their regret, and then if they're the only person who's revealed their regret, then it means that everybody else can get the party sync by all helping that person with their drive, right?
So is there a definitive endpoint to this game then? When you fulfill everybody's...
No, because you said you make a new
You
one,
can make
right?
a new regret.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, if you're looking for what the campaign arc is, like, that is all of the clocks, right? That's all the corporate clocks. So, if you're looking for the breakpoint, like, hey, when do we, wrap this game? It's when you set up the campaign, you're setting up the clocks in the corporate plan. And so if the players are able to win, that is, thwart the corporation from completing those clocks, like, that's probably going to lead you to a satisfying conclusion.
Right. It almost seems, though, if you keep adding regrets, you just had these immensely flawed characters who have had an amazing amount of regrets in their past that gets revealed, slowly over time throughout play.
Right. I think part of the understanding is that, like, your characters before the Headspace implant worked for the corporations and were,
Terrible.
Oh, yeah.
bad people. Like, they've got plenty of skeletons in their closets. They've participated in all sorts of black ops and, even before the disaster, like they've done all sorts of terrible things. And so, like your first round of regrets are probably going to be around the immediate problem, but your next set, are probably going to be more about your character, right? Like if Charger's immediate concern is that he drove the contagion into the neighborhood, his next one might not have anything to do with the disaster at all. And it might be, a smart character would link it immediately to like another NPC or something. And then that would be, a great drive to start having that NPC be in the game or the after effects of the NPC or whatever.
You definitely get the feeling that it's not the kind of game that you're supposed to, you hear people saying like, oh, we've been playing the same D&D campaign for 25 years or whatever. Like this is clearly not that kind of game, just because you would get to a point where like your character is too terrible of a person and then if you keep adding regrets, like at some point that backstory is going to become kind of unplayable. And the clocks sort of prevent that too. To a degree.
There's another thing about Powered by the Apocalypse games in general, which is that they don't level up to eternity, right? Like that's just not how Powered by the Apocalypse works. There is a defined amount of stuff you can get. And then once you have gotten all of that stuff, there isn't anything more to get. Like you can keep playing, but your characters will kind of stop advancing.
Yeah.
This game doesn't like specifically cut that off in the way that some of the other ones do, but like it still can happen. If you did play this game for 2 years, everyone would just have everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of other Powered by the Apocalypse games actually have, a final advancement that actually advances you out of the game. Mm-hmm. But this one doesn't. I think that the signal for the end of the game is the initial corporate clocks.
There's something to be said for just saying, like, this is the story we've told and it's good now. Sometimes the end isn't like when you reach the final advancement point. It's when you say like, okay, this is a good point to wrap up our story, because it just has that good like narrative closure too. And that's also totally fine.
Great. Well, I think that's all the questions that we had for this discussion portion. So thank you both so much for joining us to talk about Headspace.
Absolutely.
Senda, you want to remind everybody where they can find you and what sort of things you're working on?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter. It's unspellable, but I'm going to spell it anyway. It's IDELLAMITHLYNND, Idella Mifflin. You can also find me on She's a Super Geek, which is one of my podcasts, and Panda's Talking Games, which I do with Phil, which is my other podcast. Both of those are also on Twitter, so they're easier to find than me specifically. And they're also on Facebook and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You can find Love and Justice, which is my first game. It is a magical girls hack of lasers and feelings, released through Encoded Designs. And that is currently on DriveThruRPG, and it's free, so you should go download it, right? Everybody should go download it. And we're currently working on Turning Point. That's where I'm spending most of my time. Keep an ear out for it. Hopefully there will be more information floating around by the time this episode actually drops.
And Phil, what about you? Where can people find you? What are you working on?
Primarily, you can find me on Twitter at DNA Phil. You can find me on my 2 podcasts, so Pandas Talk Games. And you can find me on the Misdirected Mark, which streams live Tuesday evenings at 8:45 p.m. Eastern, 6:45 p.m. the Queen's time. So you can find that on Twitch. You can catch it live, or you can just pick it up wherever you normally get your podcasts. As for me, I'm always got something I'm working on. I'm currently getting ready to publish the ash can of my Hydra Hackers game. So I've been working on that for a few years, and that ash can it should be out late summer, early fall.
Wonderful.
Perfect. About the time that this episode comes out.
So look for Hydro Hackers operatives.
Well, thank you everyone again for sitting with us to do this, and thank you everybody out there for tuning in. We'll see you next time.
Bye!
Character Creation Cast is a production of the One Shot Podcast Network and can be found online at www.charactercreationcast.com. Head to the website to get more information on our hosts and guests, or even find some of our character sheets. Character Creation Cast can be found on Twitter at CreationCast. I'm one of your hosts, Amelia Antrim, and I can be found on Twitter at Ginger Reckoning. Our other host, Ryan Bolter, can be found on Twitter at Lord Neptune. Music for this episode is used with a Creative Commons license, or with permission from the podcast it originated from. Further information can be found within the show notes. Our main theme music is Hero Remix by Steve Combs and is used with a Creative Commons license. This podcast is owned by us under Creative Commons. This episode was edited by Amelia Antrim. Further information for the game system used and today's guests can also be found in the show notes. If you like the game systems discussed and wish to purchase them, links to the products can be found in the show notes. Also check our notes or the website for cool stuff to go with each character, like dice or mixtapes. Thanks for joining us. And remember, we find that the best part of any role-playing game is character creation. So go out there and create some amazing people. We'll see you next time.
I had to have a conversation, just me and Rich, just going over stuff in the system that we were talking about because Jeff had to step out for some sort of conference as well.
Oh, so it must have been horrible for you to have to sit and talk to Rich Howard by yourself.
I know, it was absolutely horrible.
It's tough.
Yeah,
You know,
people.
I lived the tough life. One reminder before we start. We are explicitive free.
Oh, we are not explicit. We have not been warned. Okay.
Okay, hang on.
Yeah,
That's a different gear for me.
let's get it out now.
What about innuendo? Is innuendo still okay? Like, I may
Innuendos
not.
are fine.
Okay, I was
As
gonna say
long
I
as
might not
they're
be in the
not
right
Put
place.
any beeps in.
Yeah. I don't want to be going through and be like, I gotta kind of erase this part.
Right, all my podcasts are naughty. That's
naughty.
Look, Ryan, you made it through our recording with Emily. I think you'll be okay with this one.
That's true.
I'm used to 1 hour, 1.5 hour. Like that's my.
I know
normal.
Chris doesn't even edit.
Yeah, Chris doesn't
like-
even edit. Like that's how I got him to agree to keep going through the show. When he,
I know. I still edit, and our show is much shorter, but I think I edit for longer.
our show requires editing.
Especially when you're talking about the beefness.
Apparently,
Yep.
Senda's Lexicon is a new segment on the show now. Ditch Lilies and Senda's Lexicon.
Senda's word of the day.
Yeah, smurge. As I recall, we did, and it was an early episode about doing crossovers, and you really enjoyed Smoosh too, or something.
Smooshed.
Oh, yeah.
Mooshed. Yeah,
I think it was smooshed.
I think it was Smooshed.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
I remember I binged all those episodes so
I
bad.
know, and then you listened to all the outtakes like straight. It was like 12 hours already at that point.
It's a lot of bonus
I've
out.
done the math.
Ryan has like a real podcast problem because I feel like people come on our show and I have the standard podcaster greeting of I've heard really great things about your show, but I haven't had time to listen to it.
Right, which is
And
what
Ryan
usually
is always like,
happens to me.
I binged all the episodes like last week and, like all 254 yesterday. I'm like, there's not even that many hours in a day and I don't know how you did it.
I don't know either. I don't know how he does it. I don't
He's
have
like
time.
in the shower with his earbuds in, I'm sure.
No, I
Like,
just
probably-
have it playing in the shower.
Oh, okay, excuse me, I'm sorry. I got the logistics of it wrong, but not the facts.
Right, the actuality. But still, that's the only like shower. I don't know. Do you listen to it on normal speed or do you speed it up?
Usually between 1.2 and 1.7 speed.
1.7.
It's like so
I'm going through one shot right
specific,
now
too.
at 1.7 speed. Otherwise, I'll die trying to catch up. But I listened to the All Out of Bubblegum one-shot episodes on 1.7 speed.
Yeah.
Oh, my God.
Ugh, why do we have a separate folder? Like, why don't we just put the game in with the episode notes? This is stupid.
One is for games, one's for episode notes.
I know, but it would make sense for all of, like, if have a folder for each game, not for each.
You're making too much sense. I'm just going to see you,
I
like,
am a professional.
reading it with your lips.
Professional.
Professional. Oh, I'm so happy that I have that on here now.
Here, let me do you another favor. You ready?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Every time a text comes through on Ryan's phone, that's the sound it's going to make now.
Then I will know that he's a true super fan of Panda Stocking Games.
Oh my god.
Was there ever like a doubt for a second whether he was or not? He's been like geeking out about this for like 2 weeks now. He's like, I don't know how I'm going to make it. I'm
Come
like,
on
they're
now.
just people. It's fine.
It's been longer than that.
It's been longer than that. He doesn't deny it. He's like, no, I've been geeking out for way longer.
This episode's going to be 100% outtake.
Story of my life.
As long as you don't separate the marshmallows out from the kibble, you're doing all right.
Yeah.
I love that you call it kibble.
That's what it looks like. If you took the marshmallows away and put it in a bowl and put it on your floor, you would think like your cat would come over and eat it.
Okay.
So on that note,
So
should we try this maybe?
it's a show, right? Okay. Yeah. You guys do it. You guys do it. We'll hang back.
Yeah, would recommend Canada. For someone who doesn't
This
eat
podcast now sponsored by Canada.
beef, I know, right? But like for someone who doesn't eat beef, here is like my weirdest like Canadian story that I was like shocked and amazed by, right? And then I promise we can go back to talking about Headspace. So we're staying at like a Holiday Inn Express or something, like not just like a normal old, like, you know, whatever, it's fine.
Like we have those in America too.
Right. It's just like a normal little hotel. It's like not schmancy or anything. It's just, you know, it's a hotel, right? And we come downstairs for breakfast. I don't eat beef. Like we've already covered this. And we roll up to the breakfast thing and they have bacon and turkey sausage. And I was like, are you
Canada.
kidding me? This is amazing. I never want to go home.
No kidding.
Like, because I never, like, nobody ever has turkey sausage anywhere, ever. Like, if I want sausage, I take it home and I make it because it's delicious. Like, turkey sausage is delicious. But
It is the best type of sausage.
well, I'm glad that you agree.
I also
It doesn't
don't
have
eat
all
beef.
that beefness. in it.
Exactly. I am not a fan of the beefness.
Well, good. I'm glad we're both on the same page here. So turkey sausage. So I sat down at like just a hotel, like free breakfast with the room, and they had turkey sausage. And I was like, my mind was blown.
And you were like, thanks, Justin Trudeau. You're doing good work.
Yeah, I was like, you're doing good work here. Hug more pandas. I agree with that too.
There you go.
Sorry. Back to the game.
Yeah. Now I hope that this will be releasing right around the time that releases.
I mean, that'd be
Because
cool. I
that
don't
would
know
be
when
so
his actual
perfect.
publication date is.
Yeah.
Well, we'll keep an eye out for it so that we can leave the part in where we're like,
Right.
where I'm like, I know who that is.
Yeah.
I know things about people.
Yeah, I feel like that sometimes.
I totally lost my train of thought and what I'm trying to say. Hold on, let me get to that page so that I can like see what I'm talking about here.
No, you should sing a song because that's what goes in the outtake.
Okay.
Oh, I forgot to ask for a waveform song.
Oh, jeez. You know, I usually work on those for like most of my drive home nowadays. They don't just fall out of my head anymore.
Or 30 seconds before the show.
You just make up songs on the fly?
I mean,
Okay.
sucks.
Right.
Okay,
And I
just
think
said
it's a
sucks.
really
Is that
good.
okay? Is that
Oh my god, there's like a really loud motorcycle. Like, right on the
Okay.
Sucks is a perfectly acceptable word.
Hang on, I'm gonna pause for 1 second because it sounds like it's raining into my house right now. And I can't tell. I'm like a little bit
That's
concerned.
concerning. You should go check
Yeah.
that.
I'm
That's
gonna
okay.
go make sure that like my couch isn't soggy.
That's okay. We're gonna make outtakes while you're gone.
Okay.
I'm glad you finished
Because
that.
we haven't done that
I'm glad
already.
you finished that with takes.
Yeah, soggy couch is
Yes, we're
actually
gonna make out while you're
Ditch
gone
Lily's song.
remotely from across the country. You guys have fun. Let me know how that goes.
Yeah, Soggy Couch is the Ditch Lily's song where she had the threesome on the couch that was all wet because it had been rained on.
Right.
Mhm.
Because it's outside in a field.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. That
And
was
that's-
like the whole purpose.
Yeah, that was the music video too. They just filmed
Yeah, and
it.
actually the cover of the album is
Yeah.
the same thing. It's
The
just a
same
couch
thing,
in a
just the
field.
couch.
Yeah.
Yeah. Beat up couch in
I
the
think I
middle of the
only
field.
heard the bootleg version of that, which was like 96 kilobit per second MP3.
Oh, was there a non-bootleg version of that?
I don't know.
It was, that was the one that was on Napster.
Right.
Oh,
That was on Napster. That was a thing.
that's right.
Did you hear the Napster episode yet, Ryan? I can't remember what I've dropped. Okay, good.
Oh, lordy. Good old Napster.
Napster, it's a thing.
It was a thing.
It was a thing.
Wait, isn't it still technically a thing? Isn't there like a
I don't know. I think
reinvented
that's how you get
Napster?
viruses now. I think if you connect your machine to Napster, like it gets taken over as part of a
It's
botnet
like,
or something.
hey, look, we're quote unquote legit.
Yeah.
Download stuff from us.
It was a beautiful time. It was an innocent and heady time when we could just, share each other's music and download it without any repercussions from the man.
Okay, I was correct.
Oh dear.
And my carpet is wet.
What?
Do you need to do something?
Oh, no, it just started in the last 5 minutes or so.
Okay.
So it's fine. It just it's really windy and lightning and everything. So
Oh my.
yeah. But it sucks because I want to have my windows open because it seems like it's 10 degrees cooler outside now.
Oh,
Oh, well, it probably is.
Right, but also my couch is wet. So
Soggy cat.
just
Soggy
kidding.
couch.
It's just
You know
the
what?
curtains.
Soggy
The curtains
couch.
are very wet. Yeah, it's a soggy couch.
Definitely a Ditch Lily song.
soggy crouch, I'm not a grouch.
Something like that.
It's the name of our new band. Soggy couch. You guys, I'm gonna spoil this for you because it's not out yet, and you're probably not gonna listen anyway because you don't care. But we're friends. It's fine.
I mean, don't set it up like that. I'm trying to flip back and forth in the book without making lots of page turning noises, so I keep turning the pages really slowly.
I'm not promising I'm not making
Yeah,
page
right.
turning noises.
If you're not
Sorry,
talking, I'll
Ryan.
just edit that out. That's okay.
Okay,
Page
so
turning noises are nice though. Those are
Yeah.
comforting and
They are nice. Sometimes I leave them in.
Also, he said steaks.
I know I was watching you and I'm really proud of you for holding it together until he finished his sentence.
I am professional. Did you see how I held it
I
together and
know,
got
you're
through that?
Professional.
So proud of you. Sorry, I'm taking notes.
Nope, we're all writing now.
Okay. I couldn't see because I had to switch off of my video so that I could look at the
Oh,
book.
that's right. I got paper.
You came prepared?
No, I didn't. I just had leftover paper and clipboard in here.
I tried to give you credit and you were like, no.
I'm a little too honest sometimes. I apologize.
That's... Ryan, you are a gift.
I come from a Palladium background, though. Yeah, Phil knows what I'm talking about.
You think this character creation is going to take a while? I want you to pick the next 20 skills at 20%.
And what education level are you? And you get money now to spend. And now you get to choose between the one out of 500 superpowers.
Oh my god.
Oh, I think I've made a character in almost every Palladium system.
Yeah, same here. Definitely.
That was most of high school for
Yep,
me.
high school and most of college for me. Okay, so we go to the operator description in the playbook, chapter
Design
6.
freeze. Or is it
Is
just
where all
me?
the stuff you're
I
talking
thought
about.
I froze.
Yeah, I couldn't tell.
There he's back.
Yay,
Okay.
you're back.
Oh,
You're
Welcome back, Ryan.
We lost you for a minute.
was it me that was gone?
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah.
I'm just sitting here talking to nobody.
Well, I mean, the microphone knows what you said, so it's all
I
good.
guess that's true. It's just gonna be dead silence. It's okay, I guess nobody cares what I'm saying. Oh,
Ryan, I care what you're saying. What are you saying?
I don't really remember, actually. If you go to the operators chapter in the why can't I think of words? In the book. Seriously.
Wow.
I'm looking at the PDF here and I'm like, what's that thing with paper in it?
Oh my god. It's the future. I don't know.
Seriously.
These books.
Side note, we should write this dilemma.
Okay.
We should write a cyberpunk dilemma about that.
Write that down.
Pulling out of the corporate. Yeah. Okay, you guys carry on. I'm being Trello here for a second.
Nice.
All right.
Terrible people.
My next
digital
question.
high five.
On 3.
No, you don't count, Ryan.
I just like
You don't get to be a
high-fiving people.
You can't do the high five if you won't be a garbage
I
person.
can't not give a high five to one that's offered.
Okay, sorry.
It wasn't offered to you, Ryan. You don't deserve it.
Sad tears.
You are not garbage enough.
Yeah.
Be more terrible.
Be more terrible, damn it. Oh.
He's got a chance. He's got a chance to redeem himself.
Oh, yeah. And we'll leave all this silence in for the actual show.
Yeah, everybody loves silence.
It's great.
I'm going to have to spell it. You know that you can change it.
Yeah, but if I change it, it will disconnect. I've seen people do it, right? It disconnects every previous tweet that's ever been linked up to you from your account.
Since when? Because like I changed mine at some point.
Well, no,
You changed the surface name,
right.
not the act.
Yeah.
You can
No, I
change
changed
the
the
act,
Oh.
but it disconnects everything. Because I watched it happen to Cat Cool.
I mean, I did it a couple
Yeah.
years ago, but
Yeah.
so I don't know if
It does.
did.
So I haven't changed it. Anyway, good. We're going to pretend that none of that happened.
Okay.
Hooray.
Ta-da,
Do you sing your
I did
outro?
it.
No, I feel like this is where singing happens.
Da, da, da,
There's no
da,
singing.
I don't even know. We don't do a singing.
Show me what you got.
Do I
Show
just-
me what you got?
Let's write a song.
Do I just push the stop button at random?
Right.
on this thing?
Is there like a thing? Do you stop at the same time? Do you?
It doesn't matter.
No, you can
No,
just
you
stop
can-
whenever.
Yeah, if
we
you,
can stop.
if you-
Okay.
But-
I'm just
Oh gosh.
Oh, everybody stopped. Everybody stopped, and I'm still going.
Yeah, I haven't stopped yet.
Okay, I'm going to stop.
Let me
Bye.
bye.
Character Creation Cast is hosted by the One Shot Podcast Network. If you enjoyed our show, visit twitch.tv/OneShotRPG, where you'll find another great show, Total Party Kill.
Total Party Kill is a weekly live Twitch stream where John Patrick Cohen, Eddie Clinker, and James Dugan play through Cephalofair Games' Gloomhaven. Join them in the stream to play along through the action and interact with constantly changing cast of characters and special guests, or watch them after the fact on the One Shot YouTube channel.